Welcome to December, where it's merry and bright with the Royals, Rebels, and Romantics. So excited to welcome you here for some really terrific episodes to close out 2025. Thank you for being here. Now sit back and enjoy. Welcome, everyone, to a very special episode of Royals, Rebels, and Romantics. And if you look behind me and behind my guests, you might get a hint at what we're going to be speaking about, which is, yes, Shakespeare, but something very exciting that we are learning in the world of Shakespeare that seems to just keep giving us more and more. So I'm so delighted to welcome two guests to the show today. We have, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. I think that's kind of fun. So first we'll hear from Madoc Roberts and then from Steve Wadlow, who they are, what they're doing, and the exciting news they're bringing us. So Madoc, over to you.
Thank you very much, Caroline. I am a film director, producer, editor, and recently I've been making a film with Mr. Wadlow, Mr. Stephen Wadlow, about a painting he has for PBS. The show we've made is called Picturing Shakespeare. I believe it's going to be streaming for quite a while and maybe even being shown in certain locations around the US.
Yep. And Steve, tell us about what it is this show is about.
Yes. Hi, Caroline. Lovely to meet you. And I won't say hello to Madoc because he gets sick of the sight of me. Yes, so we are, or I'm going to say we have been researching a portrait that we believe could very well be Shakespeare, which is a very contentious area and a bold claim. We've been at this, I've been at this for about 13 years. Madoc was unfortunate enough to contact me and join in probably just over 10 years ago now. And Madoc's been filming our journey and the research, but he's been doing more than that. We've been partners in crime with researching together. So it's been great for me because it's been a sounding board for each other. The portrait, I know this is probably mainly people listening to us, but the portrait is behind me on the wall in our sitting room. But this is, of course, a copy because, unfortunately, at the moment, the real one is locked away in safe storage in the dark, which is rather a shame, but that's just how it is at the moment. This all started when a visitor pointed out that a painting in my mum and dad's sitting room, which was full of antiques anyway, it's a very modest house. But my dad was an antique dealer, loves antiques, and this painting was sat in the corner, and he'd been watching a television program which he thought, he was watching a program on the television called Time Team, which was digging up Shakespeare's, the footings of Shakespeare's old house, new place, which had unfortunately been demolished, and a picture of the cob cake coming up. We had no interest in Shakespeare, which I know will be a terrible thing to say to many of your viewers or listeners. But he called me and said, I think our chap in the corner might be Shakespeare. I think you should start looking into it on the internet because he hasn't got a computer. And I wasn't really bothered. Then a couple of weeks later, after all those years, 50 or so years it had been sat there, a visitor came and said, I like your copy of Shakespeare. She sort of got the shakes when Dad took it off the wall and handed it to her, and it's on wooden panel, and she could see it was very likely from the right period. She then said we should start looking into it. So I did. And first of all, because I thought, we're going to make a few pound here. And then pretty quickly after that, it turned into just an obsession of trying to see if we were correct. So that's how we got here.
That is so interesting. And I love how the story starts in your mom and dad's home with something that's been hanging on the wall for years with nobody saying anything. But then within a couple of weeks, two people say to you, it's almost as if the portrait said, I'm tired of being ignored. I'm going to inspire a couple of people to get these folks going here. So why you mentioned that this is a contentious claim. why is it that there's a little tension or some suspicion about whether or not this is really Shakespeare? Why are we not all just rejoicing immediately?
Do you want to go on for that one?
Okay. Well, there are only two portraits of Shakespeare that are generally accepted. One is the engraving on the first folio, which was put together by his family and friends. So we know it must look like him because they authorized it. And the bust in Holy Trinity Church in Stratford-upon-Avon, which was again put together, made with his family. So we know that must look like him as well. They're really the only two images we have of Shakespeare. Unfortunately, they're not the best images in the world. There's a lot of criticism, shall we say, of the bust, which has been described as looking like a pork butcher, and the engraving has been described as looking like a head on a plate. So they're not the
great art.
They're not the great art. There are other paintings. There's a Chandos portrait, which has got a very good provenance, but that is the reason why any portrait of Shakespeare will come under heavy scrutiny, and quite rightly so too. It's provenance. You have to be able to prove the history of the painting that you've got, and that in this case you have to be able to prove who the person is, and those are the two big issues. In our program, Tanya Cooper says you're starting from the wrong place. Basically, she says, and she's one of the leading experts in Shakespeare portraits. She says you don't start by saying, is it Shakespeare? You start by saying, okay, I've got a 16th century panel, da-di-da-di-da, and you work your way backwards. Stephen wasn't in that position. Stephen didn't know anything about Shakespeare, didn't know anything about art history. So he's just been told by a lady who's coming to his house, oh, that looks like Shakespeare. And he's decided, oh, that's interesting. I'll do a bit of research, see what I can find out. And that's why that's the start of the provenance trail, the history, and some very interesting science tests that we've had done on the painting over the years.
I think if it's okay, I would just add to that. And of course, the reason it is contentious, whether it be ours or anybody else's claims, is because this is sort of the holy grail of Shakespeare enthusiasts, that a confirmed portrait of Shakespeare would be such a fabulous historical event, really. And because of that, over the last few hundred years, really, as many would be aware, that there have been many false claims.
Yes.
Now, some of those have been downright fraudulent, where people have changed the image to try to pass it off as Shakespeare, and other are people like us saying, well, we truly believe our portrait is Shakespeare. And then, of course, any experts or scholars that get involved are usually very nervous because of the history of portraits of Shakespeare. Right. So you're on an uphill struggle, and then without wanting to sound all sort of sympathy for me, when you've not been educated at a university and you're a normal person, basically, trying to tell these experts that have spent their lives studying and working very hard to get where they are, they're not going to sort of straight away take it seriously, and basically sort of find it a little bit amusing. But slowly that's changed.
Well, it is changing, and that's good, because you're right. I used to work, and now I'm a scholar at Folger Shakespeare Library in Washington, D.C. And the history of the Folger, Mr. and Mrs. Folger bought several portraits. They were told these are Shakespeare, and it turns out they are not. They have been overpainted. They have been this, they have been that. And so it was a little bit of a cottage industry almost. A lot of people were saying, oh, this is Shakespeare, and it wasn't. So there's a history of maybe deception, a history of people looking to sell something for more than it's worth. And unfortunately, people now bring some of that with them to you. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's understandable. I think it was the Jansen portraits, wasn't it? With the is it Folger or Folger? You're the one that had to tell me. Folger, right? Yeah. That's it. So yes. So yeah, there we go.
and it really was. They were told it was. So there has been a history. There have been forged letters. There have been possible lost plays. Shakespeare has been a little bit of a contentious, suspicious kind of kettle of fish, sort of, so to speak. So, but you didn't come at it that way. You came at it with simply something that's been in the family, a family that was not big Shakespeare fans and not looking to collect anything. How did this come? Can you tell us a little bit about how it came into your family and how it came to be hanging on the wall in that home for those years and not much mentioned for quite a while?
Yes. So my dad had a sort of an antique bric-a-brac, as we call it in England. I don't know if that's the same in America. Antique bric-a-brac sort of shop in a suburb of London, in Harrow. And he also had a picture framing business there, and he used to restore picture frames, gold leafing, that sort of thing. And so, and he called himself back then in the 1960s when I was born, because this is on my birth certificate, rather grandly, he called himself an art dealer. But he would be the first to admit, although his memory's not very good now, bless him, he's 94, that that was a little bit ostentatious, if that's the right word, or flamboyant a use. He bought and sold the odd picture. And it was around about this time that he was doing work for some for some painting restorers and dealers who were up in Mayfair in London. But they lived locally to where his shop was. And every now and again, they used to bring in picture frame, because sometimes the frames are worth more than the paintings, a picture frame for him to repair. And then one day, and every now and again, they'd bring something in and say, do you want to buy this? Or we've got a few of these, or, you know, nothing major. It was very small time. But they came in one day with this painting, and my dad remembered this very well when I asked him. Luckily, his memory was still with him when this all started, and I was interrogating him really under light with this. He couldn't remember their name, funnily enough, but he was telling me all about it. And they came in and said that they'd been tasked with cleaning, sorting, and moving on paintings from a manor house estate near Banbury. So when you're in London, everywhere 30 or 40 miles out is the sticks in here. So you're not likely to name the name of a village. You're going to say the nearest town that somebody might have heard of. So Banbury being the nearest town. So that was the first clue I had. Anyway, they owed my dad some money for the work he'd done. They then came in with this painting and said, oh, the chap thought this might be a Rembrandt. And my dad fell about laughing and said, well, you can see it's not a Rembrandt. They said, yes, but that's what they're looking for. We now need to move it on. Would you like to buy it? And my dad said, well, it's Tudor. They said, yes, it's $15.95. It had a sticker on, which was long gone, unfortunately. I think my mum probably hoovered it up at some point. And so my dad got hold of it and liked it, but he really just wanted to make money out of it. Now, he'd ended up paying £700, which was a lot of money back then. You could have got a new van, even some houses for that price. But the business used to turn over a reasonable amount of money. They owed him money, so he just paid them the difference of what they owed, and that was his way of getting what he was owed. And then he had this asset as he saw it. So he then took it along to what later became Phillips, the auction house, to make a quick profit on this wonderful purchase he'd made as a successful art dealer. And or not. And they sort of said, no, you paid too much for it. You'd be lucky to get half of what you paid for it. Take a loss or take it home and hang it on the wall. So he put a picture frame on it because it wasn't framed at the time. They probably sold the frame separately. He might have even worked on that. We don't know. And that's what he did. Brought it home, hung it on the wall. And I think it was quite some time before he did that, the way he was talking. I think he was probably scared to bring it home in case my mum asked how much he paid for it.
Okay.
And that's how it ended up there. And I grew up with it, looking at me, and it sort of, as I say on Picturing Shakespeare, back then, I mean, I was, very young, and it used to be like them Scooby-Doo portraits on the telly that follow you around the room, and I wasn't very keen on it. I used to hide from it.
Right. So. Okay. That's a great story. And I love that idea of such just an accidental acquisition, You know,
Yes.
who knows where the end of the story is? It's still an ongoing story. So you mentioned picturing Shakespeare, and that's how you and Madoc, that's how you two got together, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And this happened about 10 years ago. So bring
Yeah.
us from it's hanging on the wall, people say things. Bring us to when you two got together.
Okay. Well, it's a massive coincidence, but the time team that Stephen made, that Stephen's father was watching, when he noticed the picture of Shakespeare on the wall and that it looked like his portrait, I made it. It was and we hadn't met. We didn't meet until, I don't know, 5 or 6 years after that. So that's a huge coincidence. Coincidence number one. But I was looking to make a program. It was 2016 is 400 years since Shakespeare's death. I was looking to make a program about Shakespeare. Being a small company, I wanted to make something that was a bit different from the big companies. So I decided, let's look at portraits of Shakespeare. So looked on the internet to see if anybody had one that they thought they might, And there was Mr. Wadlow's website. It was an interesting read. I thought, well, this of all the ones I found, his was definitely the most interesting. He'd done the most research, so it was obvious that he was the person to contact.
I was the maddest, wasn't I?
You were the maddest. He was the most obsessed. Is the truth. So I contacted him, and he said, "Yeah, come along." But from the very start, the reason that we started filming, the reason we thought we'd make a film, was to get the research out there. That's what it was about. I mean, as much as I'd hoped to get a film off the ground, that didn't happen. So I could have stopped then. We could have stopped, we could have stopped working together. But the idea was that we would carry on because the research that Stephen had done was fantastic. And there were so many unanswered little corners of it that needed looking at. So I thought, well, if we can just crack a couple of these, this could be really big. So that's how we started working together. And we filmed together for about 10 years. And we made a version that was taken up by Netflix in the UK, and then PBS saw that and said they liked it, but they wanted to add experts, which for Stephen is fantastic, because the one thing that Stephen had struggled with all the way through his research is getting academics to engage with his research. So now all of a sudden we had some of the world's leading experts. Tanya Cooper, who's an ex-National Portrait Gallery, Lena Orlin of the Folger Library and the Birthplace Trust, an Italian academic, Emmanuel Stelz, who's done work on Shakespeare's theatres, Charles Nicholl, who wrote The Lodger. So we had all these fantastic, plus on top of that, then we had scientists, because one of the first things we did was to contact, Stephen had already been to the Hamilton Car, which is one of the big art institutes in Cambridge, and had it x-rayed.
And they were great.
Yeah. And what their x-ray showed was that there'd been a lot of overpainting. There was interesting stuff underneath the overpainting. There was a coat of arms. Another coat of arms had been added. There were all sorts of interesting things that we needed to look at. But Stephen had decided, and I think very, very correctly, not to do anything that was going to harm the painting. He didn't want to scrape away paint just to see what was underneath, although there was clearly a coat of arms top left. So if you could scrape the coat of arms away, you could find out exactly, well, you'd have a huge clue as to who this might be. So we decided to go to, we contacted UCL, University College London, to see if they would be willing, and they said yes, and they've got a hyperspectral imaging camera. So up we went, and we had a great time there. It's obviously a very slow process. I thought television was slow, but academia is glacial in comparison. But they were absolutely fantastic. They did scans, which confirmed some of the things that Stephen had thought quite early on. I mean, even within the first, I think it was probably 3 or 4 years before you went between going to the Hamilton Car and the UCL. But you had some theories very early on that were actually confirmed when we went to UCL. And I will say the one thing, when you go to something like UCL, you don't know what they're going to say. They might say, oh, this is the coat of arms of the Duke of Marlborough. Don't be so daft. Off you go, Mr. Wadlow, go home. It's never happened. It just every time we've gone somewhere, as Stephen says, it's small steps forward.
And that's really interesting, because at any point it could have said, no, turns out not so much. But the idea that they're small steps, but they're going in the right direction.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
that's really exciting.
Yeah. And of course we had Paris as well, didn't we? Jean in Paris was and because I'd made up my own sort of comparisons, but you can talk yourself into something.
Yes.
But I was trying not to, but then technology back in sort of checking what I'd done by other people was sort of confirming actually better than what I'd put together about how it compared with the Droeshout and things like that.
Yes.
And then of course there was a lot more on the history side. One little thing that I will say, just as a nice little side story, it's probably not, there's never a right space to put this in, but one thing I really did like, which doesn't help with the evidence in one slightest bit, but when one of the first thing I did, my family and I, we'd been to Stratford upon Avon quite a lot anyway, not to see Shakespeare, but to see, can't remember their name now, some little children's things that our kids used to like, and they were on the telly and the studios were there, and you could go see the barge that they were on. And so we used to go to Stratford a few times, no interest in Shakespeare, long before all this started. And so I was familiar with the area, but of course, once this started, I wanted to go up there and do the Shakespeare stuff.
Right.
So I went up there and I was walking around and I was looking and taking it all in. And then I noticed that Chapel Street was on the corner of where New Place was, where Shakespeare's house was. And so the New Place was on the corner of the Chapel Street. Well, my mum and dad's road was Chapel Street, and their house was on the end, and he was in the corner of the house. So I just thought, he's still on the corner of Chapel Street, just a different town.
A different Chapel Street. Oh,
I know it's so silly, but I just sort of like that little bit, you know.
That is a little family connection, right?
Yeah,
and it was meant to go to your parents.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think the other strand that we've got, I mean, we've got the science strand. I mean, Stephen's underplaying how important his visit to Jean was, because he did that on his own at first. Jean Pénicaud is the CEO of Lumia Technology, who at the time one of the biggest. They had cutting edge technology, the LAM system, the LAM system. I can't remember. It light something. I don't know. But they basically can take 1,600 pictures that slice through the painting bit by bit. And they had handled some of the biggest paintings in the world, Leonardo's, the Lady with an Ermine, the Mona Lisa. They'd scanned the Mona Lisa for the Louvre. They were the top of the tree. Stephen turns up with his painting. They think it's a pastiche. They don't think it's Shakespeare. They're why would a window cleaner have a Shakespeare? So they're a bit sniffy and just sort of send him on his way and tell him to come back. But when he comes back, you carry on.
I had to leave. No. But I had to leave it there. So I'd taken it, leave it there for a week, which I was rather nervous about, because and then go back for it. No, Madoc, carry on.
Well, when he goes back, it's a completely, it's come in, Mr. Wadlow. Would you like what would you like to eat? What would you like to drink? Let's take you out for dinner, Mr. Wadlow. Basically, the one thing they did which I saw and convinced me that there was a possibility this was Shakespeare, was they did a merger between the Droeshout engraving and Stephen's portrait. And it's so convincing. It's absolutely convincing. The face, not the whole thing, but the facial features mainly are so convincing. And when we went back recently to film with Jean, so that we had everything on. I mean, he was saying that, look at the eyes, look at the lips, they're identical. And then, having said all that, he then started to say, well, I think that it is Shakespeare in costume, dressed as an actor. And that explains the costume and why the costume has changed over the years. He came up with a theory that it was possibly being used as a prop on the stage, which Stephen and I had discussed and sort of dismissed. Because it made sense of what the results from UCL had said. They had said that the fancy lace collar had been added later, that the coat of arms had been added later, that the red slashes had been added. There was lots of stuff that had been added, and it's sort of, well, why would people add it? I mean, we were talking about people making fake Shakespeare portraits. Normally, they had a bald head and a beard.
It was the opposite. It was the opposite way round. It was the opposite. It was made not to look like Shakespeare.
They were doing things deliberately. I mean, Stephen's portrait has not got a beard, and it's got hair. But if you look at the Droeshout engraving, although I think all of the ones behind you, he's got a beard. This Droeshout engraving does not have a beard.
Right. And that is really, I think the closest is a
Yeah, that's the truth. That's the engraving.
Yeah, this is based on the engraving, and you
Yeah,
see that he
is, yeah.
doesn't. Yes.
He doesn't have a beard.
Right,
And
which is really interesting. Yeah.
So Jean was saying, look at the face, look at the lips, look at the eyes. It all matches. Look at the costume.
And it was painted from life. He believed it was painted from life as well, didn't he?
What he did was through the 1600 slices, you can see the earliest is at the bottom, the latest at the top. He could see what they call impedimenti, where the artist had made changes, which to most art experts is a clear sign that this was done from life rather than a copy. So he came up with this idea that the portrait was potentially being used as a prop on the stage, and what we were seeing was Shakespeare in costume as a character. Now, later on, when we were filming Picturing Shakespeare, we spoke to Emanuel Stelzer from Italy, who's the co-chair of the World Shakespeare Congress in Verona, who's researched the usage of props on the stage, of actual portraits on the stage, and he's found, I think it's 67. I've probably got the number wrong. Or portraits used,
I think.
Is it 76? I got it wrong.
I think so. Yeah.
Portraits used on stage between that time and the time the Carolinian time. Two of which, of course, are Shakespeare plays. One of which is Hamlet.
Yes.
The one thing Jean said to us was, what do you need to do with this? Because he looked at the coat of arms on the top right-hand corner, he said, this looks continental to me. Had you ever thought it might come from Denmark? And we thought, why is he saying Denmark? But he refused to go any further because he said, I'm not an expert in this. This isn't my field. I'm not willing to speak as a good expert would. But when we spoke to Emmanuel, not that Emmanuel was saying that the portrait was Shakespeare, but what Emmanuel was willing to say was that it was the right size to work as a prop on stage. But he also was pointed out that Shakespeare was known when he acted for playing the part of old men, and one of the traditions, a very early Shakespearean tradition, is that he played the ghost of Hamlet, Hamlet's father, on stage. And there's one scene, the closet scene, in which two portraits appear on stage. One of Hamlet's father, the ghost, and his brother who killed him. So there on stage would be a portrait of Shakespeare, and what better than to have the man playing the part looking at. So that is speculation, that speculation. It's fun. The other stuff, when you speak to experts like Jean and you speak to people like UCL, they don't speculate. They just that when they're talking about the slicing through, and when they're talking about the why the collar's been added, it's just science. They're just looking at the science and saying, this was painted after this. We can see this is this. The interpretation will then come from other people, and that's when we go to our art historians, which we've got in Picturing Shakespeare as well.
And if I may just add to that. I love the story of it maybe being on stage, even if it was at court. But what I will say is we have considered, and we don't know if that could be, it's a nice story, whether it's ever provable or not, or if it's correct or not. But one thing is for certain, because people, if they're thinking about this, one would imagine would pick up on this. This painting was not painted for stage use. It's too good. But I think that it was changed for certain reasons, which I won't go into now because it's just my hypothesis and it would take too long. But it ties it all in nicely. And the other funny thing is, one of the first art or English portraiture experts that I took it to check originally, before I started any of this, that it was actually of the correct age before I wasted any time. And he was convinced, yes, that yes, is definitely, in my view, he said it's definitely correct to the period of Shakespeare. I mean, scientifically, that's been proven since, but again, that's another story. But he said, but I think, bearing in mind these people are dealers, and sometimes they want to buy things. I'm not saying that was the case in this one, but who knows? You never know. But he was lovely, spent a lot of time with it. But he said, I think it's continental because the coat of arms, and bearing in mind when we talk about coat of arms, there's a visible one which is clearly not Shakespeare's. And then the other one we were talking about is hidden on the other side by overpaint. But the one that's clearly not Shakespeare's, that's visible, that Jean mentioned might be Danish, this original chap that I went to said, "Oh well, I think it's continental because the coat of arms looks continental." So that proves that the coat of arms looks continental. So then I'm thinking, oh, well, it's not going to be Shakespeare if it's continental. But then all the other experts, like scholars rather than dealers, including Sir Roy Strong, and he never said it was Shakespeare. He really, he would be a very tough nut to crack on that one. But he said it was a lovely portrait. Thought it might be William Seeger. There's lots of connections there. But he said it's most definitely an English, painted in the English style, an English portrait.
Okay.
And then many other experts, scholars have said that since. So this first one that was saying it was continental because of the coat of arms, I'm not sure. I'm not quite sure why he was going down that route. But it's good because we got both. We've got an English painting, one would imagine of an English gentleman, with, for some reason, a made-up, funny, strange, continental type coat of arms. So it all fits nicely. But anyway.
Yes.
And we know that the coat of arms was added later as well. I mean, that's one of the things that UCL, that the test at UCL showed us, that's not original to the painting. That's been added later for whatever reason. Not long after. No, that was a bit of a surprise that it wasn't long after, but it was added after. So it wouldn't have been in the original portrait. I mean, we speculate it may have been for the stage. It could have been for any number of reasons, and that's where the art history comes in. I mean, that's the interesting bit, is that it's not just the science. You can get so far with science, but then you need somebody to interpret it. The scientists are willing to give you are very shy to give you an opinion because they know their place is here, and the art historians are over here, and but I mean, we've had some fantastic responses from art historians now, but when Stephen started, he just didn't have any. He just didn't have any help. Stephen had not got a background in doing art research, and yet he did fantastic work early on.
Right.
What he did, what we should do is name the people who actually Stephen's father bought, because we discovered who he bought the painting off.
We found that later.
They're a father and son company called Price Hughes. So if anybody knows anything about the Price Hughes, we would love to hear from you. But also at the same time, Stephen's father also bought 300 watercolours, about 300, I think, Stephen. So if anybody's got a watercolour with the name of Stephen's father's company on the back, that would tie in very nicely as well.
Arts, it was, or Peter Wadlow. Yeah,
because
you never know.
Peter gave a very good description of the place that it came from. He said, it's not like your normal manor house. It's not pillars and symmetrical. It looks more like a row of houses, which is, you think,
I don't know how he knew that.
I
don't know if they showed him a photograph of the place, which I think is very possible.
Or they just
Maybe
told
he
him,
went there, but he couldn't remember going there. But he was saying it didn't look like as Madoc was saying, it didn't look like a normal manor house. It more like a row of houses or cottages or whatever he called it, and that sort of thing. So that's when we were then leading to try to find where it come from.
And that's a very specific description.
Yes.
Row of houses for what you ended up finding, which was something that looked like that. So tell us about that.
That's it. Well, so as I said earlier, he said it was from near Banbury or the Banbury area. It was it looked like a row of houses, or it didn't look like a typical manor house. And when he says that, I think he means when we look on these period costume dramas and things like that, where you've got a house with the grand entrance in the middle and all the Georgian windows and all the rest of it at each side. So it wasn't that it wasn't like that at all, he was saying. And the person that owned it, or the lord of the estate, or whatever you'd want to call it, was trying to get funds for refurbishment and doing work. A library was mentioned. Now, of course, that could be any manor house in a rather large area around Banbury, because there's quite a few. I mean, Blenheim Palace is just up the road. I mean, we're not talking about Blenheim Palace, but it's not that far away. And of course, we're getting into the area of Oxford as well, and Oxfordshire. It's all, there's a lot of that sort of thing. So again, this was before Madoc. I was just trawling through the internet, because the internet obviously made things a lot easier.
Yes.
If I'd have been trying this 30 years ago, I don't know if I'd have managed it, because I would have had to have been crawling through libraries everywhere, you know. But it was certainly great for starting off things that then need looking into further. And I kept looking at different things, and in the end, I sort of settled on Great Chew. because Great Kew didn't look like a manor house. It was, I think it's something like 7 miles from Banbury. It had been taken over, it had been in mothballs for many years. There's a lot more to this. Again, I'll keep this as brief as I can. It was in mothballs for many years. Then a gentleman from London, who was one of the first, I think, producers at the BBC, proved that it was his inheritance somehow or other, which I'm not disputing that. I mean, it took a long time. And he had basically in the early 1960s took the place on. The place was a mess. And he also took on the whole village, which a gentleman historian in Great Kew, when we went there, explained all that to us. And he took it on. He had all this property. He had the manor. Sorry, he had the village. He owned the farms, but he didn't really have any money. So now, at the beginning of the century, a Rembrandt had been found there and been sold. And it's funny because my dad said that these dealers said he's looking for a Rembrandt. Now, that could just be a coincidence, but we've had so many coincidences, it's ridiculous.
Yes.
So that's one little coincidence. So anyway, I've jumped ahead there, sorry, but I was looking, and Great Kew was really fitting the bill. It was everything seemed right. And then coming down the line, because obviously this has all happened over years, I could just say it and it sounds like a throwaway statement, and people say, well, that was all very convenient, but you know, one thing's done one, and then we have COVID, then we have this, then we have that, and you know, there could be 4 years between. We spent 13, 14 years on this, but probably actual real time on it, maybe 3 years. You know, actual time.
Yes.
But so he this chap turned out that he lived. Correct me if I'm wrong on this, Madoc. His actual original where he lived in London was just round the corner from the Price Hugheses. Yeah. And then he'd gone to Great Kew. Price Hughes families that we've managed to speak to, but they live over in Australia, and it's all, most of them have died that knew them and all that sort of thing. So yes, that's exactly the sort of work they used to do. So there's more to it, but Great Kew was looking pretty much like a very safe bet, and
we
nowhere.
We looked at the others as well. We
looked at all the others, didn't we? Well,
examined all the other manor houses in the area. There were a couple that were looked as if they might be the right place, but then something would get in the way. There's Ainhoe, which is quite close. They had renovations done, but that was too early. There are other ones around there, you know, that we looked at, but the only one that fitted the description that we were given by Peter's father was Great Kew. So. And at that point, Stephen thought, "Okay, that's it. That's the end. We'll never need to talk about Great Kew again." How wrong he was! Because
I did pop up there and visit, but didn't learn anything from that.
A few years later, during the research, we discovered that Shakespeare portraits had been at Great Kew. The Chandos portrait, which is there on some of the books behind you, had actually been at Great Kew, because the Chandos portrait was once owned by a man called Robert Keck, who was a lawyer in London. He died in 1719, but just before he died, he was visited by George Virtue, who was an art historian scholar, who was researching paintings around the country and was keen to see this portrait of Shakespeare. He said in his notebooks that the portraits that Mr. Keck owned 2 portraits, not one. The second one being a portrait painted in 1595, oil on board. Well, Mr. Wadlow owns a portrait that's 1595, oil on board. And when Robert Keck died, he left everything to his cousin Francis. Francis lived at Great Kew. So that means the Chandos portrait and possibly the second portrait of Shakespeare went to Great Kew, which is exactly where Peter's description fits. So, you know, if it then starts to get all very, oh, hello, this is more than just it looks a bit like Shakespeare. We've got scientific evidence that shows that that's starting to point in that direction, and we've now got art history as well. We've got provenance starting to fall together that shows it could, you know, that it could be this second lost portrait. And Mary Edmond, who's a scholar, again, she started the BBC. She thought that this second portrait that Robert Keck owned was the portrait that was used as the model for the Droeshout engraving, which would explain perfectly why the portrait looks so much like. Obviously, as Stephen says, it's the engraving's bald and has got a beard, and he's probably 20, 30 years older than Stephen's portrait. But whoever painted that picture, as Stephen says in the program, they must have had that conversation. That someone must have said, "Okay, here's a portrait of Shakespeare when he's young. He's dead now, so we need to make this portrait look a bit older."
Yeah, make him older.
Make him older. Make him bald. Give him a beard.
You
Well,
can
this does
see
a
that.
sort. Sorry.
I was just going to say,
This-
all that makes sense. And all these roads from different directions are coming to the same place.
So many coincidences. But then, of course, somebody listening and thinking, well, hold on a second then. If that's the case, I mean, I'm not saying we've got every answer, but there's obviously, we have to think through, well, how has this happened then? Because then the thing that you automatically think to that is, well, if that's the case, which I believe it is, whether we can prove that 100% ever, who knows? But we're certainly going to try. But if that's the case, how come the Chandos went on? Obviously, it wasn't called the Chandos there, but how come that went on to world dominance?
Yes.
And how come our one ended up in a pile on the floor to be cleaned in the 1960s? So, or how did it become lost? And there's certain disagreements or arguments one way or another about what George Virtue meant in his notes, because people will say, well, 1 minute it says 1, the next minute it says 2, and all the rest of it. And again, which is something that's worth looking into if anybody's interested. It's quite an interesting story on its own. But I think it's possible that Keck bought that painting being told, or our painting being told, that it's Shakespeare, handed down for whatever reason he's being told it's Shakespeare. And then perhaps, I drive Madoc mad with all my ideas, but anyway, but then perhaps Virtue goes along and says to Keck, don't be so stupid, that's not Shakespeare, it's not Shakespeare's coat of arms on it. Keck then has the ump and thinks, I've been a bit of a twit here, really, obviously it's not Shakespeare, and throws it to the bottom of the pile. And the Chandos comes rising, because nobody's disputing the Chandos is Shakespeare. I know they say it's not 100% proven, but, we're not trying to say, it's often quoted that we're saying ours is the only portrait from life of Shakespeare. Don't know if I ever did say that, but I mean, the Chandos might be from life and it's probably Shakespeare, it's just a younger version. But so I think it's possible that Keck might have gone off of it. But then somebody else made a very good comment and said, well, I don't agree with you on that idea. I think it's all about fashion. At a certain time, the Chandos is a more, what would the word be?
In vogue. The style of the Chandos portrait would have been more in vogue in around 17,
and
19.
ours would have been a bit flamboyant and all.
It would have looked old-fashioned. It would have looked old-fashioned.
Throw it into the corner,
Yeah.
Yes.
So who knows how it became lost? But even if it wasn't Shakespeare, I'm sure it is. But even if it wasn't Shakespeare, that painting has been lost for years because somebody, for some reason, tucked it away in an attic or in an outhouse.
I think it's worth saying that it was in a very bad condition when the Price Hughes's first got it. It was quite,
I mean, it had to be cleaned up to see who it was.
A lot of people
to see who it was, to see what it was.
Yeah, a lot of people are quite surprised by the condition of the painting and say, "Well, where's the cracklish if it's that old, etc." I mean, it's been dead. It's had dendrochronology. It's had art experts look at it, so there's no
paint tests
and paint tests. So there's no disputing the age.
Right.
But the one thing that everybody says is what's the program is, but he's got a squint. He's got a squint. Your point is got a squint. So what we did, and unfortunately it didn't make it into the program because there's not enough time in these programs, we asked an ophthalmologist to come along and have a look and compare I mean, this is on the website, and if people want to go and have a look, it's quite interesting.
On our blog.
Yeah, on the blog.
Say the name of the website, Madoc. Advertise it. Go on.
Is this William Shakespeare? Yeah.
Yes. And I will put that in the show notes, so don't worry. Okay.
But if people want to go and look, what she does is she explains what a squint is. The name strabismus is used in the medical profession, and then she compares the engraving, the bust, with the Chandos, the Cobb, and the Wadlow to go along and have a look and see what she says. I mean, it's interesting. I'm not going to,
I didn't realise the bust had such a dodgy eye, for want of a better word.
You don't see the bust. Yeah.
As she said, you're looking up at it.
Yeah.
But
Well, all these things are so interesting. And so I definitely want, and I want you to speak it, and then we'll put it in the show notes. But now I want to know, and I want to be able to tell everybody watching and listening what's next. So first, Picturing Shakespeare, PBS, it is still on sometimes, and it's going to be streaming for quite some time. So you can watch that. Yeah.
Yes.
But tell us, besides the PBS, what's next? What are you still working on? Where can we find out more and keep track of you two?
The thing is that it's slow. That's the truth of the
Yes.
matter. I mean, when you put a program together, a television program, you put it together in a couple of months, and it all seems, you've got such a lot of information that you've accrued over the 13 years or whatever that Stephen's been doing. That it's jam packed, but it's a really slow pace. But in recent months, there have been some quite interesting developments, in that we had a look back at some of the XRF data that we had from UCL, because we didn't understand it. That's basically why. We didn't understand how certain chemicals relate to certain colors. I mean, there are obvious ones like lead is white. We've all heard of lead white. But from the results that we have there, that has thrown up some, I'm not going to say much more, but some interesting possibilities with regards to the hidden coat of arms and what color it might be and what the design might be. So we're talking to them again, to UCL, or to hopefully go back there and have a much greater detailed, more accurate XRF done of the area around the hidden shield, to see if we can find. I mean, the hidden shield. It might have been added later. It's not going to be it could be the silver bullet, but it might not be. Again, that needs to be looked at. And if that fails, the other thing that we could do is paint sampling. As I've said, Stephen doesn't want to do anything destructive to the picture. So it's a case of...
We don't mind little samples.
Microscopic, to find out what colors we use.
But that's why we went with the XRF thing, isn't it? Because the XRF is non-invasive. I must also say as well, like Madoc's saying, it takes a long time. I mean, I might look like the Droshout by the time this is sorted, but it's not a bad head of hair for getting on 60, but I don't know how long it's going to last with all this going on. But anyway.
I had black hair when we started.
Yours has all moved to your face. But what happens with it taking a while? See, it only seems like yesterday I first walked into UCL. I'm not even sure how long it is, but it could easily be 5 years now.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah.
Is it better? Yeah. Well, what happens in that 5 years in these institutions? Technology moves on.
Yes.
So now they've got stuff. So it sounds like they were remiss in the first place by not doing what we're asking them to do now. But that's because they weren't able to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
But we've now asked a question, because it's not down to them. They've got lots of other things to go on about where we're thinking, that would be great for Stephen Madoc. We're not going to go thinking that now, are they? Well, we've then contacted them and said, we've got a sneaking suspicion we may have found something, but we don't quite believe it could be. And then how can we test this? And they're like, well, that's funny, because we've just been testing this new bit of machinery that would do it. Maybe. I mean, we've done this before. We've taken it along, and it doesn't give you... I'm not saying it doesn't give you the answer you want, although that's possible. It might not give you any answers at all, but you've got to try it. And it's because now it's going to go for something different. And again, over the next however long the period is, I mean, I'd love this to get resolved. It'd be hanging on the wall, people seeing it, and I could stop cleaning windows. That'd be great. Yeah? I mean, Madoc and I carry on talking because I'd miss him every day now. We could just go and sun ourselves somewhere, Madoc, can't we? If the families want to come, they can. That's up to them. But
there are lots of loose ends, aren't there, Stephen? There are lots of loose ends. Because what we do is we constantly go back over the research and find new things.
It's a bit like when, I don't know, Oak Island. They're going over the old stuff now and again, and they find something, but
find something new.
Bit more. Yeah. But and then I don't know if we're supposed to say this or not, whether it takes off or not, but we are, of course, writing all this down because we think it would make a very good book.
Absolutely. And the journey that it has gone on, and the things you have been able to, both scientifically from that perspective and the layers you were discussing, and through the art history perspective. I mean, they're two different lenses, and they're leading to the same place, which is so interesting.
Yeah.
because it seems like every door you finally get open, it's a small step, but it's in that same direction. And I'm just thinking about Paris and the week, what happened between the week when you dropped it off at the beginning of the week and then when you go back after a week. And that's a huge step. I mean, that felt like a really big step.
Yes.
But it's in the right direction. Even the small steps are going in the same direction, which seems like one of the most exciting things. Even when they're small, they're bringing us closer to whether it's
the other thing,
just one silver bullet or if it's a bunch, that comes together. Yeah.
Well, that's it. I mean, after Paris, we got a massive amount of attention because we put out little press releases before in the hope that we put one to the local newspaper in Banbury in the hope that a local would see it and say, "Oh, I remember that painting." We do that quite often. So after going to Paris, we put Jean's his conclusions out to the press, and we got massive press interest. I mean, not just from the UK, but from all around the world, including America, and that really did make a big difference because then you come under public scrutiny. You come under the scrutiny of the web and some wonderful theories that people come up with on the web. Oh, it can't be Shakespeare because of this, or it can be Shakespeare because of that, or whatever.
Because he didn't exist.
Yes.
Well,
there's that.
But we're not interested.
No, I mean, and the media liked the story because it was a window. I mean, I used to be a window fitter, then I changed to window cleaner. But so it's a tradesman or a window cleaner might have a painting worth all these millions of pounds if it's proven to be Shakespeare. Well, of course, it's never probably going to be 100% proven to be Shakespeare, so it's not going to be worth that top figure. So, but that made the headlines, which is a little bit unfortunate, really. But without that, we wouldn't have got it where it is, and it wouldn't have got on Netflix, and it wouldn't have done this. And what I feel is starting to happen now, and I don't mind people saying what job I do, I'm not worried about that. We've used that as part of the way to get it out there. Mm-hmm. But what I feel seems to be happening now is that people are more interested in the painting, and without wanting to sound like I'm being arrogant here, because they're more interested in the painting and what's going on than about this window cleaner's doing this, that, or the other. And so I feel slowly, it's slowly, but of late it's been quite much faster. That we're moving in the right direction to have it debated, discussed, talk to wonderful people like yourself that then all talk about it.
Right.
And, some people will agree, some people won't. Listening to what we've been saying for the last hour, they'll say, well, yeah, but why? But then if they watch the programme or look at the website, they see all the different bits coming up.
Right.
So
I mean, going back to the squint, we've all seen pictures. We've seen the engraving. We've seen the bust. How many of us actually noticed that they had a squint? And then we looked at but one of the main comments on the internet is oh, he's got a squint. I didn't know he had a squint. And other things come up like that. And that's exactly what we want, is for people to engage on that level, but also for experts to come forward and say, well, I can sort that out for you. I know about squints. I'm an expert in squints.
Right.
And that's why Lena.
Yeah.
Charles, Lena Orling, Charles Nichol, I know we've mentioned them, but Emmanuel Stelzer and Tanya Cooper, obviously they've got to be very guarded on what they say, because we've explained that and we understand that. It was just so lovely for them to actually, with the exception of Charles, because he was in another country at the time,
so he couldn't.
It was lovely for them to actually be prepared to stand with the painting and talk about it. And that alone was delightful for us, I think, for you and me, Madoc, wasn't it?
Absolutely,
And okay, who knows what one of them might say in the future or whatever. They're all far more intelligent than me. They're all been brilliant people, but they didn't stand there and slag it or me off. They found it interesting.
Yes.
And that means we're starting to get to the stage we wanted to be at.
Yeah, and I think that's because of Stephen's approach. The website's called Is This William Shakespeare? Not This Is William Shakespeare.
Right.
That makes a big difference because, we know that the proof is not there, and the proof may never be there, but it's great fun. It's a huge adventure.
A lot of coincidences.
and there's a lot of coincidences, and they all point in the one direction so far.
And the conversation keeps going. And that's one of the things I love about this story is you say it feels like a long time. And I'm sure sometimes you look back and think, What a long time. But it's great that the conversation is growing. Yes, I'm sure. But it's growing and it's expanding, and new voices are coming in and considering it. And that is to me, that's really the sweet spot of all of
that. That makes it worthwhile. Without sounding corny, it does make it worthwhile. Yeah. Because you suddenly feel like, I wasn't so mad after all. Even if I'm wrong, I still wasn't so mad to think.
No, because there's so much conversation about it, and we're learning new things throughout these conversations. Yeah. And I don't know if there will be, like you say, 100%. There's not 100% agreement even on the Chandos right now, you know? So 100% agreement is not something you're looking for. But the conversation is growing and it's exciting, and that is wonderful. And I am so excited for you to share it. Now, tell us, is this Shakespeare? Is your website? Is it .co.uk? Because I want to make sure I have
Is this williamshakespeare.com?
Okay. So I'll have that in the show notes.
Thank you.
And we'll also have the PBS link. Is it still available? Netflix only in the UK?
The Netflix program is only UK.
Okay.
But the PBS program is streaming. I think it's streaming until March. We can definitely send you the details.
Yeah. And that's great. So
it's on there. If you go to their site now, if you go to the PBS site, and Secrets of the Dead is the series it's in, and look at Picturing Shakespeare, you'll find a link to stream it.
And we're delighted with PBS as well, of course, for doing that.
Yes.
That's just opened up a whole new audience for us.
That's wonderful. And I know as an American, PBS is where, especially when I was growing up and there was not streaming yet, PBS is where I got Six Wives of Henry VIII and Elizabeth R and all my early stuff. So big PBS fan right here. So, well, thank you both for coming on. This has been such a fun journey to chat with you about all of this and this ongoing conversation. Because much as we think we know Shakespeare, turns out we have so much more to learn about him and what he looked like. And I'm so excited about this. So thank you both so much for joining me, chatting with me, and bringing us all up to speed and inviting us all into the conversation. Is this William Shakespeare? So thank you.
Thank you very much, Caroline.
And we shall keep you posted if anything pops up.
Yes, we will keep updates coming. Absolutely. And we'll have you back.
Although if it's not what I want, I might be hiding in the corner crying, but we'll still let you know.
Well, we'll have you back, whatever. But what you have done, both of you, and Steve for even longer, is invited us to have a conversation about possibility and about what we can learn in all different ways, from science, from our history, from people's stories, from your dad's stories. I mean, just think of what we've learned from what he remembered and shared with you and your family. Exactly. And that is so valuable. Whatever ends up, the value of that is immeasurable. And I am so grateful for that and for you sharing it with us.
No, and we appreciate your time. Thank you very much for inviting us.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Royals, Rebels, and Romantics. And thank you for spending another year with us. As we close out 2025, I want to thank each and every one of you for listening. A big shout out to the patrons who make all of this possible, and wish you the very best as we go on into 2026, learning all the ways that history shows us what's possible. Happy holidays from Royals, Rebels, and Romantics.